On my side, we are talking about Nazarene education and clergy development on the continent, and I use the acronym T.R.E.E. That's for teacher development. We want to be able to support scholarships. Let me tell you what's troubling me. In the next 5 years, many of our older practitioners and theologians will retire from most of our schools. We will have a deficit of teachers. We cannot go and recruit unless we are training African leaders from within their frameworks to bring about African solutions. And so we're not doing that fast enough. And that's a challenge to us, that masters and PhDs, we don't have the resources to present as many of our willing clergy. We have bright minds, young clergy who would love to go on and study. But the challenge is that we aren't able to offer those kinds of scholarships. So teacher development is an issue for us. Resourcing education and clergy development, I just mentioned this. I'm so grateful for the 12,000 Rand matching grant that has been made possible. And yet, when we think about it, the challenge is not simply the development of academic minds. We also want to develop mentoring programs, which in itself become costly in terms of travel, communication. And so the needs begin to add up. Mentoring partnerships, I see this as our non-formal educational system. We have to have pastors who are being mentored and given at least some supervision before we release them into senior leadership across the continent. We have to find ways of developing them in some ways through an internship program. And let me give you an example. You will not get onto an aeroplane if you had the pilot who had not met a certain number of hours, because life is vital and you want to keep body and spirit together as long as possible. The way in which we do clergy development often is that a person comes through a school, they get their course of study, barely any mentorship, no formal internship. It's a requirement, but it's not often measured. And then we release them to take on a big church. We're setting people up for failure. And so we do need to find ways of resourcing, but also resourcing clergy in terms of co-vocationality. You don't just have to work in the church. You can be resourced to be a teacher, an economist, and come back into the church. And so we want to be able to train and equip them in those levels. Empowerment and engagement in education. Again, I'm talking about the Francophone and Lusophone developments. Those are pockets, huge pockets. Almost 2/3 of our membership are in those pockets. We need to find ways of empowering and engaging their development of their schools and their programs. And then establishing a regional network, the ongoing institutional work. In other words, our schools don't often work well together, although we have a system called ANESA. Because of the busyness, and recently in COVID times, that's not been working well. And we're trying to find ways to establish those connectivities.